Hi, good day all of you. Welcome to our session. Welcome to our channel Intelligible Tutorials. In this previous video of the software testing methodologies, we have discussed regarding the data flow testing and what are the strategies of the data flow testing, what are the terminology used in the data flow testing, and what is the introduction of the data flow testing. Now in this video, we just listed out what are the various kinds of the data flow testing strategies and how they can be represented. What are the various operations of the programs like slicing and as well as dicing. All these things now we are going to see. Okay, so now coming to the very first one, what are the various kinds of the strategies in the data flow testing? The various kinds of the strategies in the data flow testing is the very first one is all DU paths represented as ADUP. Define and use. D stands for define. It's a two character set operation actually. DU is D for define and U for use. And next one all uses strategy. Okay. And next all P uses and some C uses strategy. C is for computational use and P for predicate use. For the operations, we use two different kinds. Number one is computation, and number two is called as the predicate. So for such kind of the computations, we are having two types of computations here: computational uses and predicate computation uses. So these two now we have used, and now all C uses and some P uses. So it is the reverse of the top one, all C uses and some P uses strategy, that is ACU plus P. So the above one is APU plus C, and second one is ACU plus P. C for computational purposes and P for predicate computational purposes. Okay. The next one is all definition strategy, that is AD, and the last one all predicate uses and as well as all computational uses, that is ACU and as well as the ACU. Okay, so these are the various strategies, how they will work now, how they will represent it, and how they will work now we are going to see. The very first one that we are going to see is all DU paths, that is ADUP. So what is the ADUP now? All DU path strategy considered as the one of the strongest data flow strategy, and the every DU path from every definition of every variable is used. That means after define a variable by using D, it must be dedicated to any one of the use. After use only it will be tested. That is nothing but all DU paths. Okay, so whatever define that can be used for any kind of the purpose, and then only that can be tested. This is considered as the default one and as well as the strongest data flow testing strategy. Now coming to the second one, all user strategy. All user strategy means at least one definition clear path from every definition of every variable to every use of the definition to be exercised under some test. All uses, whatever uses are there after definition, so it has to consider all the uses. Okay, so at least one definition must be one, and for every definition it have to use for every use, okay, of the definition to be exercised under some test. Okay, so we will test based on the single definition D and as well as multiple uses U. Okay, so this is considered as all uses. Okay, so define is by default will be there, so we can write it as simply AU stands for all uses. And next one is all P uses and some C uses or some C uses strategy. For every definition of the variable, it has to include at least one definition free path from the definition of every predicate use. Okay, so at least one definition free path must be used for predicate usage. Okay, there are definitions of the variables that are not covered by above prescription, then add computational use test cases are required to cover every definition. So what does it indicates? That means definition free. So the variable which is so before defined, or the variable which is defined very early or very previously, that can be used for every predicate use. Okay, so every predicate use are some computational uses. Okay, so here the whatever variable that can be defined, that can be used for p uses, predicate uses, and as well as the computational uses. But some of the variable having the definition of the variables, but they won't comes under either p variables or c variables. Okay, so these won't comes under the p uses, then we have to add these to computational uses. Okay, so to cover the every definition, so every variable which is defined, that must be comes under either p uses or some c uses. The one which comes under not comes under the definition, which is not comes under the predicate use, we can add it for the computational use test cases. Okay, to cover the every definition. So whatever definition that falls under either predicate use or which is not comes under the predicate use, that must be uses in the computational use. So what is the life cycle of this particular thing? First one is the D definition, and second one it must be used, and third one it must be killed, whatever it is. Like that we are having multiple number of the life states. This already we have discussed in our previous sessions or in the previous videos. So for every definition, it must be two uses. It must be a computational use or it must be a predicate use. So the variables which comes under not comes under the predicate use, they must fall under the computational use. That's what it is saying. APU plus C. Next comes under all CU cases and some all C uses and some P uses. That means whatever definition variable that is defined, it's not it must be comes under first one either computational uses. It's not comes under the computational uses. It must fall under predicate uses strategy. So after definition of the variable, it must be goes to by default computational use. If not under, it goes to the predicate use, like that. Okay, so this is the way we have to represent this particular strategy. If you understand the define, kill, computational uses and predicate uses, all these things very well, then you can understand these strategies also very well. Next one is all definition strategy. So what is the meaning of this all definition strategy? This all definition strategy asks only one definition for every variable, be covered at least one use of that variable, be that use of computational use or predicate use. That means, whereas in the previous cases what we have discussed, see here, the definitions may be in multiple number of the definitions. There is no bother about the definitions here in this case. Okay, so it may be free of definition or it may have definition or it may have multiple number of the definitions. But coming to the all definition strategy, okay, so it can have one definition only for every definition, for every use it must have. Okay, so for every one definition, every one use must be there. Okay, so each and every one defined that must be used. That's what the same thing it is saying, that is AD. Okay, the next one, all predicate uses, all computational uses, ACU strategies. All predicate uses strategy is derived from APU plus C strategy. Okay, by dropping the requirement that we include the C use case. Okay, and all computational uses strategy is derived from ACUP strategy by dropping the requirement that we include P use. So these two are required. These two are derived from these two, ACU plus C and as well as ACU plus P. That means it may comes under either C or P. Here also it may comes under either P or C. Okay, so here it is representing all predicate uses. It is dedicated only for all predicate uses strategy, but not in the C use strategy. Okay, in the previous case here APU plus C we have included computation strategy also, but here only the predicate strategy only represented. And now coming to the computational strategy, computational use of strategy, here we include P use in the previous case. Just a minute. See, we use ACU plus P in the previous case, but in this case we are using only for computational uses strategy. That means single use strategy only defined over here. Number first one is the predicate, and number two is the computational strategy. Like this.